it's so funny. When I was Poet Laureate, when I was named Poet Laureate, I went down to Washington a little bit beforehand to meet the assistant, to meet the Librarian of Congress and all that, and to kind of acclimate myself. And I did ask what my duties were. The only official duties are to sponsor a reading series at the Library of Congress twice a month, and to make sure that these, so that was fun to be able to invite poets from all over the world, actually, to come to read and to read for the archives. That was one official duty. The other duty was to advise the Librarian of Congress, and also, and this was a funny one, to promote poetry in any way that I see fit. I said, what does that mean, to promote poetry? And I said, well, what's the budget? Because if you're going to promote your budget, and I got a kind of a blank stare. So I thought, okay, this means that you make it up as you go along. What else does, you know, I'm an artist, I could create. And I decided to just do things and figure they would stop me if they didn't have enough money, which was probably a good way to go about it, because they did find money for various things. But what was interesting, it's sort of like being Miss America for poetry, and that as the Poet Laureate, you have an immediate cachet, and you have status. People see you. You have some kind of publicity, some kind of public stage. And I thought of myself as being more like a lightning rod. People would say, oh, there's a Poet Laureate, let's ask her, or let's tell her what to do. And I got so many letters right from the beginning from people all over this country telling me what I should do. And some of them were really good ideas. So, and I couldn't implement all of them in the time I was there, in the 2 years I was there. The one thing that I found very, very helpful was to remember that many people are very frightened of poetry, and as Poet Laureate I had a chance to travel around to just inject poetry into everyday life whenever I could. And so I visited grade school kids, or the Naval Academy, I mean all sorts of places where you thought, you know, didn't know they liked poetry, or where poetry was absolutely necessary. So each Poet Laureate decides kind of how they want to use that public arena, and I decided to try to just be there in people's faces whenever they turned around, to make poetry something that was all around us. So I went on Sesame Street, for instance, and yeah, it was really fun. The other thing that happens with the Poet Laureateship is that when I was in Washington, there was an opportunity to inject poetry into the government. And though the Poet Laureate does not have to write official poems for anything, there were many occasions when I would be asked to say a few words, which is, of course, a kind of a euphemism for, do you have a poem? But there's always a poem. You can always find a poem for almost any human situation. So I didn't write poems for specific events, but I could look and see if I had a poem which would fit. And because I think that it's always important. It's important if there's a celebration for some bill being passed, it's nice to have a poem there to remind us all of the human element and the human effort that went behind it. So that was important too.